Hi everyone. We'll do a brief review of week 3, and we're in section 2. First of all, we want to do a lot of practice with SQL. The more practice you do, the better you'll get, or more comfortable you become with that. MySQL command, SQL statement, capture and put it in a document. Worksheet 1, it really depends. Some people say it, they spend quite a bit of time. I've seen one where they said they spent, a half hour and they were able to get through it. But you need to work through that in terms of the SQL. We should be done. We're already checking those. We talked a little bit about making sure you document the commands. There's lots of them. You put that in an engineering journal. Somehow you organize that so you can look them up. Alright? Theory. In databases, we will talk about views as we move along. Even specifically, you can take data from your tables, bring it all together, and create what looks like another table, and that would be a view. The user looks at the data. Nowadays, a lot of times it could be through a browser, doesn't have to be, and they get the information they want. They don't really care what's down below here, in most cases. That can be done through a web page, stored on a web server, getting it from a database management system. So you'd have some kind of access to here, and then from here to here, this would be very controlled, how they get the data out of the database. Lots of discussions around, we talked about primary keys, we talked about security, and so forth. So let's take a look over here. We have this view from the top, then we have the logical part, where we've been doing a lot of work at the logical part. And then we talked about entities, and we did that example earlier in the term about doctors. You decide entities. Entities make up what you're going to work with, okay? And then from there you start breaking it down. You get attributes and so forth, and then you design it into a database. Right here, however, it's physically stored on the hard drives. We have the software that makes the connection, database management system. We're using MySQL that makes the connection between these two. So you'll hear me say this a lot in the review. The user wants access to the data, and we have different views that they can pull out, but we have certain things that we do in creating the database to allow that to happen. But we don't have to worry about the programming that's actually writing the data to the physical drives. More on that. Years ago, this is actually Wednesday's work. Years ago, we had flat files. Then we moved into relational database. Flat files, you just put one big file. You put all the information in there. Lots of data redundancy, difficult to update, all kinds of issues with flat files. Now we have relational databases, a database management system, and we're using MySQL. And there's actually different versions of the engines that drive MySQL. So MySQL takes and manages the data then, how it's stored, so we can work on more of a logical view of the data. So when you look at the big picture, a lot of times they'll say we have the conceptual view, some type of schema that, we got some entities. What are those entities going to be that's going to make up our data that we're going to store? Convert that into a logical model. Maybe sometimes it starts looking like tables. And that's going to communicate to a physical model. In this transition, we get more detailed with the information. We not only start creating entities as tables, create attributes, we start looking at what we're going to put in there. But even before that, we worry about each attribute having a type. Okay, so here we're talking about the idea, is it a numeric? Maybe it's a numeric, maybe it's text, maybe it's a date. Okay? Alright, this is actually the last page. It's the same thing, okay? You have users up here at the top. And you have programmers. Programmers can write back-end code for browsers and so forth, using SQL to get the information they want from here. Data independence means this data is independent of what they're writing for programs, because they can use this standard query language to access it. Back on the old flat files, a lot of them were written with specific code, and so there was what they would call data dependence between those. How the data was written depended on how somebody coded it. And so here's another approach. We have the external view, which can be coming in from a variety of locations. Okay, in terms of some people looking at this piece of information, some looking here, some look at this, some look at this. We have the logical view, where we create, we maybe start creating the tables, attributes, their type, and so forth. And then we create and we put that into a database management system, which then allows it to go in the storage, internal view. Alright, so that's it for week 3. Some of that will be reviewed in week 4.